Today. I got some interesting information here from Steve Fambro, and he's actually going to dive into a little bit about himself and where he came from. And he's going to talk about his first job and how he got started with um, Chris Anthony and how they started Aptera. So let's get into that. And I know it's losing my mind, can't find the words, no, I can't seem to find. But I'm really trying to get reason right. Let's take our time and choose whether we green or yellow, whether we deep or shallow. Please me now, 'cause we're about to lose, whether we buy or hello, whether we stay or jello. Welcome back to my channel. Just wanted to let you know that this one actually gets a little long too, so I'm gonna do this one in two parts, and it's very good information that he's bringing out here. So let's go ahead and get started with that.
Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to the Deal Maker Show. So today's guest, has an amazing journey to tell. From building, scaling, from turning things around, from traveling around the world. Many lessons learned, and definitely he's going to be sharing them with us. So without further ado, Steve Fambro, welcome to the Deal Maker Show today.
I thank you for having me on, Alejandro.
So born in College Park in Georgia. So how was life growing up there?
I had a fantastic childhood. I mean, it's before cell phones, of course, even before cordless phones, I'm ashamed to admit. As growing up as kids, we played outside, we rode our bikes everywhere. We had to come in when the street lights came on, and that was our cue. It was, I think, more of a carefree world then. I really wish I was able to give my children that kind of life growing up, but it's difficult in today's age.
So even you had your first job. You were flipping burgers at McDonald's. Is that right?
That's right. When I was 16, I worked odd jobs before that. I worked in a tire warehouse and I cut grass and stuff like that. But the first sort of proper job was cooking hamburgers at McDonald's. I was 16, and I say you don't know how to do anything until you've made or make anything until you've made thousands or tens of thousands of something. And even today, I still draw back on that job where I think at the time it really teaches you to think ahead of things. When you're making thousands of burgers, it's not as straightforward as you think. You have to plan ahead. You have to make sure materials are there, that the material can flow, and et cetera. And so it was a great learning experience.
So here you are already making, some money. And basically, instead of like maybe following the traditional path, you just decide to join the army and off you go.
Yeah, a lot of my friends went to university, and I wanted to go, but to be honest, I was an average student in high school, and I didn't really put the effort into my schoolwork, and I would pay for that later in university by having to start from scratch with basic math in my university program to get my Bachelor of Science Electrical Engineering. I realized at the time my parents probably would have paid for me to go to the university, but I felt that I would have been wasting their money, and I couldn't have done it in good conscience. And also staying locally, and maybe I thought at the time I wanted to work as an auto mechanic because I love working on cars. I was working on cars since I was, as young as I can remember. I thought the Army would at least give me the opportunity to see the world, and with the GI Bill, I could maybe go to college later when I was a little bit more mature, and that's what I did.
So obviously, when you were doing your journey in the army and you visited places like Germany and things like that, you started to really, develop this incredible passion, and you ended up getting your degree. But it was in electronics and everything that is electrical. So how did you started to develop the love for that?
Well, when I went to electronic school in the Army, calibration and test equipment repair, calibration school. And at the time, it was a very advanced school. It was a 9-month school, which is long for the Army. Most of the schools are in weeks or months. And we learned how to repair electronic equipment down to the component level. Well, and I loved it, by the way. I loved that job. But in the short time I was there, I saw the equipment being replaced by small circuit cards and and there was no repair. You'd simply plug them in to a fixture, and a red light or green light would turn on. It would tell you to throw the card away. And I saw the whole infrastructure of my industry and my schooling basically going away, being made, obsolete, right before my very eyes. And so I just said I should be on the design side of this stuff rather than the user operator side of this stuff if I want to have any hope of future growth and future opportunity. And so that kind of steered me into electronics as an industry. And then once I got settled back in the U.S., that's when I pulled the trigger, so to speak, to go to university. And I went to University of Utah, spent 5 years there full time, even during the summers, to finish my program, Bachelor of Science, Electrical Engineering, 2001.
And then obviously you started working as an electrical engineer, which was the segue into what would be your first business, the original Aptera. So tell us about that incubation, that bringing, to life, type of process. How was that for you?
I think I was maybe the first or second electrical engineer hired at this biotech company, Illumina, here in San Diego. And I was hired out of university before I even graduated. So I had a job lined up, everything, of course, when I graduated. I worked for a very talented boss with a very talented team who let us try great things and imagine things that were maybe impossible. And the electrical engineering degree, I found, gave me a great toolbox to solve abstract problems, complicated problems, where I could immerse myself in math for hours, days, weeks to understand a problem and solve it. And so we built robots that made DNA, which then would go to be used for genetic discovery and things like 23andMe and stuff like that. It was very rewarding, but after 5 years, I wanted a new challenge. And at the same time, I'd been building this idea of a car, of a high-range electric vehicle in my garage, and I decided that I wanted to do it full-time. So I wrote a business plan and got it funded. And actually, I did that after I quit my job, but my wife was pregnant at the time, and I came home and I told her, I said, honey, I want to start a car company. And I couldn't believe it. She was just in a really good mood. She said, okay, honey, whatever you want to do. So I sold my stock to fund the company. I gave myself, I think, 6 months, to get funding and to get some traction before I would go back to the workforce. And within a couple of weeks, we got our first term sheet. And within a month, we had money in the bank and we were a new company. So it was my first startup ever.
So how was that for you? I mean, what were the early days like?
Well, the early days, before kids, my daughter was born several months after we got our first funding. And it was, 18-hour days and loving every minute of it. And that's what it was like. Through subsequent rounds of fundraising, as we got bigger and made more progress, we decided that to have a chance at getting this big government loan, the ATVM loan, the same one that Tesla got, the board felt that we needed a, quote, professional automotive team, some management team from Detroit with high volume experience. And so we went along with that and brought those team members in. I helped interview the CEO and some of them. And I think everybody gave it their best, but after a year, it just didn't work out. And so Chris and I left, and Chris started a battery company, Flux Power. I think they just uplisted on the NASDAQ last year. And I started FAMGROW, and that took me to the Middle East.
It's interesting because there is this book from Jim Collins that is a Good to Great, and he analyzes companies and how they perform over time. And the main difference of companies that still have the founders involved versus those that don't, and also the ones that, put together a very good succession plan. But it seems that the companies that end up, putting aside the founder and bringing, new, fresh, management or whatever you want to call it, they tend to not perform so well. So I guess, what did you learn from this experience of you guys, the founders, being put aside and having, fresh air coming in?
Well, one of the things I learned is, there's a book, it's written in the 1500s by Niccolo Machiavelli, The Prince. My synopsis now, having done deals all over the world, is that's how the world works in that book, as Machiavelli describes it. It's not how I want it to work, It's not how I want to raise my children to behave. But I think in truth, that is how the world works. And I had a very naive understanding at that time of how world works and how, people who have climbed their way up in the corporate ladder have got there. And so I was in a very naive position, really, to, I think, play an integral part with the management team simply because of me being the sort of founder in my first startup versus people who had much more political and corporate skill than I did. I would say it really wasn't a good fit. And I don't know. I mean, sometimes it can be a good fit, and that's how it was sold to us. But it wasn't a good fit. So I guess my lesson learned there is I would have done everything I could to at least postpone the professional management team until more of the important DNA could have been transcribed into the company and we got further along in the business so that there was less risk of it being sort of disturbed as what happened.
So you guys leave, the company ends up getting liquidated, and then you go and start Farm Grow, but eventually Farm Grow takes a different turn that takes you to the Middle East. So what happened there?
Yeah, so I started FamGrow again in my garage. I'm a foodie. I love to cook, eat, make food, talk about food. In fact, when I traveled in the Middle East, in Armenia, Hong Kong, wherever, even with Google Translate, I would always strike up a conversation, with the taxi driver, or with maybe the guard at the palace, or anything about food. Like, hey, what was your favorite food growing up? What food does your mom make that you miss? Stuff like that, because food unifies everybody. Doesn't matter what your political leaning, economic class, you can always make a conversation about food. And so it was no surprise to me, that I wanted to grow it. And I wanted to grow kale in particular, and I couldn't in my garden because the aphids would get to it. And I couldn't use pesticides because my daughter loved to play around in it. That turned me on to hydroponics. And so I started growing in my garage, and I started thinking about how would you scale it, and then how would you automate it, and then what would some IP be around that, some technology to make that happen, and wrote a business plan and got it funded. And we raised about $9 million. And we demonstrated an indoor farm in Michigan, also here in San Diego and Oceanside. And we had retail clients like Whole Foods. We had wholesale clients. We had a fantastic product that people loved. But I think the economics of scaling in this country just didn't work out. The competition that you face from really high quality produce that's grown in greenhouses in Mexico and other places is really hard to compete against. And so I think it is an idea that has merit in certain places, but I've almost gone back full circle to trying to find ways to grow things in the soil and outdoors and using as much of nature as possible, as opposed to excluding it. But when that wound down, someone from one of the family offices reached out to me and started a conversation, and I flew out there to talk a couple of times back and forth, and they made me an offer. We negotiated a deal, and I moved my family out there and lived there and worked for them for 2 years, and it was great. I was able to take my family to, we vacationed in maybe 7 different countries at a time we were there. We'd never be able to do that here because the cost, the distance are so long. We were able to do that there, and I was able to run some really big projects there, and from scratch, from desert sand to a complete project, and really demonstrate this kind of stuff at scale, and develop export revenue channels to Singapore and Hong Kong for local grown produce. So it was a rewarding experience.
So while you were obviously turning the page on your entrepreneurial, perhaps a path for a bit, because here you were working really on the other side, more on the investment side, perhaps, you really got an insight into how you deal with what you can control and what you cannot control. Can you share that with us?
Stop it right there. He did gain some insight, and he's going to share that with us in the next one. It's just getting a little bit too long. I want to end it there. And I also just want to go to the website and check out, what's happening on the advanced launch or the accelerated program, and see how they're doing. And let me just blow this up. We'll take a look at what's going on here. I'm sure it has grown a little bit. Let's see. So, okay, yeah, it has jumped a little bit. It's up to 2.26 million now with 183 investors. And so the last time I checked, yesterday, it was 176. So that's about 9 more individuals that have jumped on. And I'm expecting this to fluctuate a little bit. Some days you're going to have a lot of people joining. Some days you're going to have hardly nobody joining. But I mean, it's steadily growing. And that is impressive. I am really appreciating that. But just leave a comment below. You think we're heading in the right direction? We know that Aptera is really moving things nice and steadily. And we do want to hear from you. And if you haven't invested, I'm not a financial advisor, but if you talk to your financial advisor and see if you want to invest in Aptera, I believe this would be a really good company to get involved with. They're doing everything possible to get the Aptera on the road, and they are not going to disappoint you. They have kept me pretty excited, and I know that they'll keep you excited as well. So yes, go ahead, and if you're new here, subscribe, hit the link, ring that bell, and join my channel. All right, you guys take care. Y'all have a good one. And we know that very soon Aptera is going to come out and we are going to be rolling. Oh, yes, we are going to be rocking. So, hey, like I said, if you want to catch the next channel, hit the like, ring the bell, subscribe, and you'll catch my next video when it comes out. Y'all take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. All right, bye-bye.